Well, it's great to do an interview with David Morrison, who's the lead market analyst for Trade Nation. So, good morning, David. How are you?
Good morning, Jim. I'm fine, thank you. How about you?
Yeah, very, very good indeed. So, look, obviously, it's great to have the chance to do this interview. Before we get started and talk about Trade Nation, give everyone a bit of background to your history in the markets. You've been in this industry for a long time. Some would call you a veteran, even. So, tell us a bit more about
Yeah.
your background and experience in the financial markets.
Yeah, I guess you could say a veteran. I started out sort of in the mid 80s, and I worked for a small commodity broker back then when the big products were, would you believe it, gold and potatoes. Potatoes not such a feature anymore. I don't think they're even traded on an exchange. But that's how I started out. And then soon after that, I got a job with IG Index, as it was then, and I was with them. So this is my sort of entrance into spread betting. And I joined them just before Big Bang. That was a deregulation of the financial markets, a very exciting time to be in. That was in 86. And then the very following year, of course, we had the great financial crash, which was also exciting in a very different way. And sort of I went on from there. And sort of over the years, well, after I left IG, I worked for a short time on the life floor as a locals, trading on my own account. Wasn't really very successful, so came back into the spread betting industry with City Index. Then me and some fellow colleagues at City, we broke off on our own and had financial spreads. We formed financial spreads as an alternative. That got sold on. I moved on. Me and Stuart Lane, we started up the spread betting wing of Man Financial, which was part of the Man Group, the big hedge fund company. And then I went through a variety of things. And all that time, I was sort of managing risk. I was on the risk desk. I was doing that kind of thing. And then in 2009, just at the sort of the hiatus of the great financial crash, just before things turned around, I started working, talking about markets rather than sort of managing the risk in markets. And that was sort of a big turnaround for me. And I've been doing that ever since.
So the fact that, it's 2023 now, and you talked about 1986. You've been in this industry. I was just doing the calculations in my head. That's 37 years. It's pretty phenomenal.
It's a long old time, isn't it? Yeah.
You've seen most things, David, I can imagine, in that time.
Well, quite a few. Yeah. There have been some, incredible events, and the markets are always fascinating. And of course, they're always joined to sort of political events, geopolitical events, and everything else that's going on in the market. So I think if you have an interest in that, then that's the sort of first step to getting involved in the financial markets themselves.
It is. I'd be interested to know what the pound and the dollar was back then, and what the FTSE was as well. But there we go. So
yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about, the company. Obviously, you've been at Trade Nation quite some time. So talk us a little bit about Trade Nation. Obviously, I do know a bit about it, but tell us a bit more about the history of the company. How big is Trade Nation? Where's its origins? When did it launch? Tell us a bit more about the company and, the business itself.
Well, its origins go back about 10 years. It wasn't known as Trade Nation then, but originally the company was a B2B service. It was offering the back office functions, the risk functions for companies who wanted to offer spread betting and CFDs to their customers, but didn't want to sort of go through the whole rigmarole of setting up that kind of business. And we had I think we were providing services for about 20 different operations, but then decided to switch direction and go from B2B to B2C. And we did that, and we were under the name of Core Spreads. And then sort of after a while of this, and I think Core Spreads sort of got going in about 2015. After a while of this, Stuart Lane, our CEO, he'd been looking around at the business. I mean, Stuart's been in the business pretty much as long as I have, and has seen all the changes that I have. And one of the things that was really sort of disturbing him really was the huge influx of companies that were coming into this space, particularly in FX, who really weren't giving their customers, clients, the service that we thought and Stuart thought they ought to be giving. And so he decided that really he wanted to change things and really place an emphasis on putting the customer first, which really quite apparently wasn't being done. And that's how he came up with the idea of Trade Nation. Trade Nation was a name that really encapsulated that idea in a better way than, say, Core Spreads did. And so we started Trade Nation. We rebranded as Trade Nation right at the start of the coronavirus back in March 2020, I think it was. To give you an idea of how things have changed, Over the last 10 years, we've gone from having a staff of 10 up to 120 now, and we've gone from revenues of 1 million to 40 million. So it's been quite a decent run, and we are where we are, and we're looking to keep on growing.
Fantastic. Well, that sort of growth is a real indication that business has performed incredibly well over that time, and I guess obviously being part of that is making sure that I guess regulation and making sure that the relevant licenses is a critical part of that growth strategy as a company that's got a true trusted brand and reputation. So how many how many authorities and how many licenses have you got in place at the moment as a company, Trade Nation?
Well, quite a few. I mean, in the UK, we are regulated by the FCA, obviously, but we also have operations in Australia, so that would be ASIC regulated. We also have operations in the Bahamas, so that's for our European clientele. And then also we have the Seychelles, which it will cover sort of the rest of the world. Did I mention South Africa? I think I might have done. So that's another one as well. So we've got UK, Australia, South Africa, Bahamas, and also the Seychelles.
Fantastic. And look, one of the questions that lots of traders will have is how do you protect client funds and data? Talk to us a little bit more about how you guys go about that and ensuring that the client funds are protected.
Well, a number of ways. We have negative balance protection across all jurisdictions. And that's automatic unless you opt to be a professional customer, professional client, which is a different thing altogether. But we also have things in the UK, of course, we have the FSCS, which gives a compensation fund of £85,000 for anything that should go wrong. Now, that isn't in other regulatory jurisdictions, but what we do is in terms of data protection, for instance, we extend GDPR regulations right away across all our entities. And we also we stick to the FCA's client reconciliation process, which is a very high level of and very well thought of level of client reconciliation, which should give people some more confidence in sort of putting funds with us.
And I guess the question around people might sometimes around in the case of let's say there have been unfortunately some brokers that have where things have not been positive. Let's say there've been some fraudulent cases in the past. I guess is there insurance coverage for assets in the case of that? I mean, obviously, Trade Nation is highly regulated by the FCA, but this gives that extra assurance to traders, doesn't it?
Well, it's yes, that is that £85,000 compensation that you get from the FSCS, but that is the UK only. But I should also just for clients and anyone thinking of coming to Trade Nation, the banks that we use Barclays, we also use Westpac, and we also have ABSA, depending on which regulatory under which regulation you come. And bear in mind that where the place where you are regulated is dependent on where you are resident. So that's how that works.